This bus here is a gift. From a wife to a husband. She knows nothing about buses. I don't know if he knows anything about buses. But I get a phone call one day and it's, hey, I want to find a bus. I want to surprise my husband. And I'm like, let's do it. This is going to be fun. It's going to be awesome. Finding a clean tin top in today's marketplace is actually a lot harder than it should have been. And it really was sobering for me because I'm always scrolling through and looking at all the available, nice classic cars in the Volkswagen and Porsche world. And you get deceived sometimes into thinking like, oh, I'll be able to find one that's really clean for a decent price, especially when you have some budget to work with, right? And then you wind up going through and being like, well, that's not clean, that's not clean, that's not clean. There's all these deals, but they're not that clean. Ultimately, this popped up locally on Facebook Marketplace in Wisconsin. It had been dry ice blasted underneath, pulled out of a barn. Here we are. We've got to replace engine bay fuel hoses, vacuum hoses, intake manifold gaskets, coil, distributor, lots of stuff, lots and lots of stuff. Brakes, brake hoses, caliper rebuild, shift coupler, shift bushing. I can't wait, so I won't wait. Let's go. Going up. Now I'm actually going to start first by working on the brake system, but I'm going to be taking this rusted exhaust unit off at some point and replacing it. And because all the fasteners are old and baked and rusty, I'm actually going to soak it down in advance just so I have an easier time when it gets to that point. It always makes sense to make a checklist. I sometimes have a whiteboard on the lift post and I'll write down everything that a vehicle needs while it's on the lift. Just common sense, keep some notes. Other times I just keep it all up here in my thinker. And so, as you go through that punch list, if you see something that you're gonna have to do ahead of time, hey, soak it down, make it easier on you later, Get a nice dab of that stuff everywhere. And then move on to breaking down the brakes. And actually, while I have this out, I'm probably gonna spray down some of the brake components too, because hey, more the merrier. These little guys are 11 mils. If your bus is still original. The e-brake is not on, but I don't expect this drum to want to come off of here. The brakes are hugging pretty seriously. So here we go. Well, I tried the old pound and bang. It got me a little room, but not much. And honestly, I don't know. It was overly optimistic that I thought this would slide off of here after all these years. So the adjusters are completely frozen in back, which I deal with a lot. It's very common. You've seen it before if you've watched other episodes where I've done brake work on barn find vehicles. So we're gonna have to use some heat. But the thing about it is, this lovely penetrating oil that I used all over the place to try and free things up, including those adjusters, because you got to start somewhere. Try penetrating oil first. Well, it's highly flammable. So I don't really feel like lighting everything on fire today. So I'm going to move to the front and then disassemble front brakes because got to do that anyway. And then some of this penetrating oil will have evaporated, penetrated, that kind of stuff. It'll still probably want to light on fire, but it's not going to be like raw liquid sitting on the metal that's going to just right in a flame. And then I can come back and heat the crap out of these adjusters, get them up and spinning, and go from there. And who knows, maybe just with the extra time that the penetrating oil has, things will be copacetic. It's the Be Aircooled spelling bee word of the day. Copacetic. Use it in a sentence. After we finish disassembling the front end brake system, maybe everything will be copacetic. This was not the plan, man. The plan was to do the rears. And now I'm up here. Silent tears, world's smallest violin. Okay. All right. That actually never works, but it's always worth a try. Just, yeah. All right, here we go. Got some floor cardboard down, conveniently located bucket. We'll cut this brake line free, hopefully. I was pretty optimistic with the back, so you don't want to be too optimistic, you know? Get this guy cut free, and then we're gonna have fun taking this caliper off. And I am doing wheel bearings on these, on the front end. So we're gonna do new rotors, wheel bearings, pop the calipers off. You know, we'll do the front end first. It's okay. That brake fluid looks really rusty. Let me tell you something. I already actually freed this caliper up because this bus wouldn't roll at all. It was like locked. So I took the retaining springs off and slid the pads out once already. So I can, you know, slide the pads out relatively fast from this and be able to remove this caliper. Oftentimes, I will mess with trying to get these cotter pins out of here. But in this situation, I'm just gonna try and wiggle some territory on it and then get it with my end nippers from profile. Right like that. Take the head off of it. Squeeze the ends together. Nope. Yeah, it's time for the old pound and bang. Well, there's one of them. That little splinter there. Let's see if we can pull this one out with any success too. Fine if it breaks off too. There we go, both of them. That was more of a war than it should have been. Now we can pop this tie rod free. I got a couple of different sizes of this tool. Oh yeah, almost forgot. Got to put that nut back on it. Here's the thing, if you don't put the nut back on, it just flies away. It can just pop up. It can maybe hurt you, those sorts of things. You just thread this nut back on. Go about your business with the press tool. And then you're in good shape. Last I checked, this is a 22 millimeter. I was wrong. Still wrong. Got it. 25 millimeter on this particular one. Your tool will probably be different. Keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times. Because it's going under a lot of load. Wow. So even as clean as this bus looks, what I'm finding is everything is going to fight me. Should have put in earplugs. How was that for you at home? Is that an enjoyable experience? And that is why you put the nut on the bottom. Because when it does that, can you imagine if I didn't have that nut on the bottom, how big a dent would be right on this pinch welt right here from this tie rod shooting up, and not to mention just everything else that could go flying everywhere. I will probably give the other side some heat before doing that because did not realize it would be that tough. Anyhow, now that we've got that cut free, just move it down and out of the way. We get at the lower caliper bolt nice and easy over here, which is what we were trying to do the whole time. Gotta make sure I left the upper one in. I did. Okay. Now, like I said already, I removed the retaining spring. So the retaining pins, no big deal. Now the brake pads, on the other hand, they're still kind of stuck in there, but you know. Probably better off just trying to remove the whole caliper all at once. Lower bolt. Upper bolt has a collar, so you're not going to confuse the two. That's the collar on the upper bolt there. Little pry bar on the edge of the rotor inside here. Just force the pads past it. Pretty original pads on here. They're full thickness. This needs brakes because they're seized, not because this thing was ever driven that much. Now, I have these brake calipers rebuilt because they are the absolute best. You can get new replacement ones now, but they're not to the same quality of these original ones. This is actually a VW Audi caliper. You can see the rings and the VW logo on it. Oh wow, the seal says genuine on it, so it's the real deal. So we'll take this into my guy, and you know, that's that. He'll do a rebuild for us. I use a Phoenix caliper here in the Chicagoland area. Tanasi is his name, Thomas, if you're not Greek. And he's the best dude ever, and he really does a good job on calipers, and he is the Caliper King. So check him out. I'll put a link to his channel in the description. And yeah, for now, I'm just gonna keep doing teardown on this front end and get it down to wheel bearing level, get the brake hose off and everything, and we'll wait to flame up the rear side and flame up the rear side. I do say some questionable things, don't I? Okay, well, I'm gonna stick with it. So we'll just wait to, you know, get the rear adjusters freed up so we can get those brake drums off. But in the meantime, I focus on this stuff. Put this on the bench. Well, that's disappointing. Someone has installed the adjusting nut the wrong way. Well, that would explain why the wheel bearings are in such bad shape overall. Because if that thrust washer behind there doesn't butt up to the fatter side of this nut, they've got it on the cone side of this nut, not the back side, then it's gonna take load kind of funny. I mean, it just is. I mean, it'd be pressed down in the middle for a while, but you know, all this stuff is wear and readjust. So as soon as it gets a little room, it's not gonna have very much more support towards the outside edges, and it's gonna be able to do that even more, which is just gonna take your bearings out even quicker. So, because everything's so stuck together, I'm not really focused on popping the brake rotor off of the hub yet. I can just take and smack that when it's down on the ground at some point, or take it off on the workbench, or whatever I deem appropriate. And as you know, this channel is nothing if not appropriate. Ouch. The heck. The heckin' frick. So sad. I don't know if you can see clearly. Let me move it up. This is what I'm talking about. This is technically the top side, and this is the bottom side that would ride against the adjustment thrust. And so this bottom side rides against this thrust. It all popped there so you can see the bearing itself. So this thrust is just a thrust washer, and there's the bearing with the little, you know, rollers in it. It's a tapered bearing. And then this is the adjustment nut, and this adjustment nut is supposed to be with this flat side against that washer, so the greatest surface area is backing up that washer. And instead someone misjudged and they put this notched side, the tighter surface area, against there. And you know, I suppose it was working just fine, but it's just not how it's supposed to be. And you know, who knows how it would even dissipate heat or whatever. This is how it's supposed to be on here. So, and it is a reverse thread situation. So it goes on like this and goes flat against this like that. And there's a greater amount of surface area against this washer. And this still hides up under the lip. My guess is that they thought that wasn't gonna fit under the lip of the rotor, but it does. That may have been more explanation than you needed on that, but that's what I was seeing that made me so annoyed. Pop this adjuster off of here. I'm curious about the wear mark on here. I've got a floor rag I'm gonna use. Always keep a floor rag. Let's see what this wear mark looks like. It's kind of polished on the bearing side. And this side just sort of looks like eh. So there's the wear mark on that side. You can see how it's kind of off center. And then this side was the bearing side. And you can see how it's kind of polished on one end and then not on the other side. So the bearing slipped a little bit and was maybe in there wobbling a little bit for some period of time. And this, the way that it's ovalized here and tighter on one side and then, you know, fatter on the other side in terms of that wear stain, that indicates that that nut was actually on there the correct way for more time than not. Because like I said, the body of that would have sat off center on there because it's so fat on one side. So all my whining and complaining is really just me whining and complaining. No, let's take it down off of here. There you have it. Back side of the hub and the rotor, wheel sealing back there. We'll work on breaking this all down and apart in a moment. But I'm gonna go and do the other side and just keep plugging along on this process. Okay, so I've dropped the calipers off at the caliper rebuilder, which is Phoenix Caliper, and Tanasi is the man. He does all my caliper rebuilds. Anything vintage, I don't bother with replacement calipers or remachined calipers if I don't know who's doing the remachining or the replacing. Look, if it's a high performance new caliper, then you're fine. Just buy it, bolt it up, and enjoy your life. But if it's a reman caliper, I prefer to have it done by people that I know are going to do it right. And a lot of the calipers that are available, especially for these buses, are just not to the same caliber. Caliper. They're not the same caliber of caliper as the original calipers were. Yes, I like that. That turned out perfectly. So I send the original ones over to Tanasi at Phoenix Caliper. You can mail yours in to him. He'll do them. He'll package them up in bubble wrap and mail them back to you. It just makes sense. You can also mail order a replacement caliper and fingers crossed that it doesn't have issues. But, you know, gonna prep these hubs while he's rebuilding those calipers. And so I gotta knock the hubs out of the rotors. Sometimes they just fall right off of there. But as you saw earlier, things are a little more seized on this car than were anticipated. So the old pound and bang. Got it. Got that one too. Hub. Put that rotor down over there. We're replacing the rotors. I'm not going to cut them. I'm not going to bother with that. So there we go. How beautiful is that? What should you know about this? Well, at this point, it's like a lot of cleanup, right? There goes one of the bearings. Here, check this out. There's the other bearing. So first you're going to want to uninstall your bearings. And then after you've uninstalled your bearings, you're going to clean up the hubs of all the grease. Pop these rear seals out so you can get after the rear bearing. We grab a little pry bar and pop those out. Got my little pry bar. I like to use this panel clip remover tool. It's already got a little bend in it and it just works well. It gets up under the seal. You can jog it down against the bearing, remove the seal. Simple, easy. Then you can uninstall the inner bearings. Uninstalled. It's lunchtime. No, of course, I'm kidding again. It's not lunchtime. I gotta clean these up. So I'm gonna clean these hubs up, get rid of all the grease, and then I'm gonna be punching out the races. So here's the dirt in the hub. Okay, you can see all that congealed grease all up inside there and everything. And then you see the conical race. I'm gonna clean all that out, and then we're gonna punch these races out. I don't know if you can see there's a little divot inside there. Let's see if I can get the right angle. If you see this little toothed divot right here, right by where my finger is in back the race, that little cutout right in front of my finger, that's for a punch to get on the back of the race and actually punch the race forward right there. So, gonna clean all the grease out, punch the races out, then we'll put new races in and be able to grease up the new bearings, install the hubs, set tension on the wheel bearings, put the rotors over. Hopefully by then I'll have new calipers, rebuilt new calipers, rebuilt calipers. You get it. Calipers of high caliber, Excalibur caliber caterpillars. Hopefully by then we have butterflies from caterpillars. Man, I love free association. I don't know why, I just do. So, while I clean these hubs up, check out what just got dropped off at the shop. This is a cool thing, man. Living that Baja life. Now the hubs are cleaned up to a decent degree. At least all the grease is off the inside of the bores on them. Follow me on over to the vise. We're gonna punch those races out. Got it seated up gently in the vise. There's a lip on the inside of this race, like I was showing you over there. I'm gonna punch towards the vise itself and then against the vise, because if I go side to side like this, it's just gonna rock back and forth. So I'm gonna go forward and back of where it's held and just punch this, starting with the inner race. I'm gonna punch that one out first. One down. There it is right there. And here you can see that's the stop for it. And from this side, that's where we're punching against. Just past that, punching that inner race out. Now we're gonna do the outer race. Flip it over. Work it out far enough that it's not gonna mar the lug nuts. Lug studs, rather. Same drill. But, like I said, this one has these little cutouts. In fact, I need to rotate this because I want the cutouts to face how the vise is actually holding it. There you go. It's the outer race. That's all there is to that. I'm gonna go put this in my ultrasonic and I'm gonna let it soak and clean up further rather than hand scrubby. And I'll punch the races out of the other one. And then we'll install new races and bearings and wheel seal. And it's a pretty quick operation overall. It's actually very friendly. Remember how that rear brake drum was so seized up and I was like, we're gonna work on the fronts for now and then I'll hit the rear with heat. And you remember that from just like a little bit ago? Well, I hit it with heat. I pounded and I banged. I pounded and I banged more. I used the old pound and bang some. More heat, more pound and bang. Wound up taking the axle nut off, which, you know, is a good thing sometimes. You can pull the whole hub off there because I was like, man, this drum is just not coming off the hub. So I took the axle nut off, pound and banged more, loosened adjusters. It was, oh my gosh, it was a thing, right? Well, look at what I discovered when I pulled it all apart. Check out what probably easily 50 years, these are original, this is all original here. Check out what easily 50 years of just sitting does to bus rear brake drums. That's the shoe material. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She's a mean mamma jamma and a bad mother scooter. Well, I mean, what in the... I mean, of all of the things. And if you would like to know where all of that brake pad material is, well, let's just come right down here to the brake drum. That's right. It's all just hanging out in the brake drum. And now, here's the really fun part. Okay? Are you ready? You ready for this? I'm going to show you what the adjuster on the one side turned into just for me to cut it free far enough that I could slide this whole brake drum and hub apart. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. Look at how mangled that is. That right there. It's still really piping hot, so I'm not touching it, but look at that. Just, the teeth are gone. I mean, gone. This one even, this fared better. This adjuster star is like still somewhat, and I was able to turn that one all the way in. This one just, whoo. So anyway, that's what it took to get that one apart. And I mean, we're just gonna keep going. I gotta tear all these shoes off and clean up the backing plate, and we're gonna replace shoes and hardware, and definitely gonna replace those adjusters. Replace the drum, replace the hub, the whole deal. I'm gonna get some cardboard down and flip this drum around and pound the hub out of the middle of it because it's still stuck in the middle of it. And I should prepare myself for what I will encounter on the other side because I think we're gonna be in for a similar situation. Hey, the front hubs though, front hubs are done, they're clean. So I'm gonna dry those all down, prep them, and we'll get ready to throw some wheel bearings in those. Hold up a second. Before we do those front hubs, it won't take long to put the bearings in those. I need the catharsis of this. I need this. Needed that. For sure needed that. Yeah. Stupid thing. I am going to throw this in the lake. This, no good. Just chuck it. Man. Got the hub all cleaned up. Now, here's the thing. Even if you are the Dan Marino of punching out bearings, or bearing races rather. Is that too old a reference? Even if you're the Tom Brady or the Peyton Manning, I don't know, who's the greatest of all time? Leave it in the comments, right? I'll let you guys fight over that one. Even if you're the greatest of all time, aka GOAT, at punching out bearing races from hubs, before you punch in the new bearing races, you have to do one thing. You have to check and make sure that you haven't inadvertently mushroomed the back seating surface of the race. And it doesn't matter how good you are, a punch is a punch, a race is hardened, the hub is pretty hard. Sometimes though, you make a little inconsistency and you get a little mushrooming trying to punch that race out. I've done a pretty good job, but I do have a couple of mushroom marks on this. So let me show you what I'm talking about, and then I'll show you how I fix it. Right inside here, you're gonna see up in this corner of things, well, it's not a corner, it's a circle, but up in this area of the circle of things, you're gonna see those three little divots, three little mushroom marks, right? And the rest of this edge, as can be seen down here, is nice and clean, okay? So right where you see those three little divots, that's a reasonably good shot of it right there. Those three little divots are standing proud. Now, if I go ahead and put a race into this hub the way it is right now, what's gonna happen is that race is gonna seat almost all the way down everywhere except for where it's mushroomed. And even if I smash the hell out of it trying to get it in there, which could be bad for the race, could distort it or just mess it up in general, even if I press it as hard as I can, there's a good chance that I'm not gonna hammer that mushroom down flat just using the whole race. And a lot of guys won't care and they'll throw it in there, but in fact, you're gonna run your bearings out of true and wear them the heck down. Now the front, because it has these little knockouts on both sides from VW, this section here and this section here, the front doesn't have that issue because as you can see, it's not perfectly round all the way around. They did those two little knockouts so that you can get at the back of that front race and you can put a punch right through there and punch it out. Why they didn't do that in the back, I don't know. But you can put your punch alongside this for knocking it out to the rear. You can use that as an avenue to get back to the rear. But the rear oftentimes gets a little mushrooming. So what I do is I take same hardened punch or a different hardened punch and I punch that back down and I level it out. And if I need to, I'll hit it with a little emery paper or something like that just to smooth it down. Most of the time I can just flatten it back down with a punch and a hammer. So that's what I'm gonna go do. This side, by the way, a little bit more successful overall. The slightest little elevation, only in one section right up over here. I don't know if I can get light on it enough. Yeah, you can kind of see it there. So the slightest little elevation right up in this neck of the woods right here. And I'll go ahead and punch that flat as well, and then I'll be ready to install my races. But that's just one of many things that when you're attacking a job like this, you need to pay attention to. Because, hey, I mean, we're only human and parts are parts and metal is metal. If you want to have it go the distance, rest in peace, Greg Brown. You need to pay attention to all these little things, right? I mean, it's just, oh, I bummed myself out now. I miss that guy. All right, anyway, you need to pay attention to all these little things and you'll have successful repairs on your bus or your friend's bus or my customer's bus, whatever bus you're working on. Now, I just remembered something. I'm not particularly pressed for time with this project. And as a result, I'm going to go ahead and take the bearing races for both the inner and outer bearings, left and right, and I'm going to put them in my freezer. And that will make the install of said bearing races into these front hubs that much easier. And while they're in the freezer, it's easy enough to do at room temperature, don't get me wrong. But because I have the luxury of having plenty to do on this vehicle, while they're in the freezer, I'm going to go ahead and free up this other brake drum, which, if it's true to that side, should take me about an hour or so. It will get them to a nice, cool point, and then I can pop them into this side. And if things go quicker on the brake drum, then I'll just move on to doing something else, because there's a whole host of things. I could take the rear shock absorbers off. There's a bunch of stuff I need to do on this vehicle. So I'm going to let those chill out in the freezer and, you know, get into other stuffs. This is where those races are. Just hanging out in my freezer next to some sausages, some farm stand pork. Well, if that wasn't just a grand old time. Man. All right. I broke down the rear brakes and stuff, and all that needs to be cleaned up. But the races have been chilling in the freezer for a minute, and we're gonna pop them in here, get it all set up and ready for these hubs to go back on the front end of the vehicle. So let's go grab those out of the freezer. Now while they're cold, gonna fit them up to a race installer. There's a little engine oil. Put it on the hub, come on. I need to refill this thing? Nope, it's in there. Squirt a little engine oil around there. Get that nice and lubricated up. Go ahead and square up that race as best as possible. Send it down in. Give it a quick inspection from the back side, and you can see that it's fully seated all the way around. You can see the knockout positions for where you'd punch it back out. And that's one installed. Flipping it over. I suppose we could do the front side on this side as well. Try and get to these on the quicker side while they're still freezing cold, because they start to come to temperature pretty fast in a room. Check it, make sure it's seated up nicely in there. Clean it up. Engine oil around the inside here. Same thing on this one. Gonna have to use the back side of this race installer. This one does not fit correctly. You don't want to mess up that race, even though this is aluminum and that's steel. So we'll be using the back side of this race installer to send these in. So square it up by finger. I forget if this clears it. Huh, just barely does. That's fun. Does clear the inside, so we'll keep sending it. And of course you're hearing it seat all the way, and then again, you check up and through, make sure it's seated all the way on the inside in there. And it is. We'll leave that one flipped like that. Same thing on this side. That one started to go even by hand. It's squared up there. There we go. Clean them up So that's all there is to installing the races into these hubs. And then the next part of everything is going to be to grease up the bearings. I start with the inner bearings, the back side of the hubs first. I'll pack them with grease, I'll put them in there, and then put the wheel seal behind it, and then flip it over, do the front wheel bearing, and then install it on the car and adjust them to tension. So that's the process I'm going to go through right now. It's pretty simple to pack a bearing. Just load it up with grease, make sure you get all the air out of it. There's a wheel seal. And put it down into the race. I'm going to put a medium amount of grease inside these hub bores just to keep everything nice and happy. You don't pack them completely tight, you'll get a hot hub. You don't want a hot hub. Get them both out of here. Who needs them? So yeah, a little nice loose amount of grease in there with a couple of air pockets around the inside of the hub is going to be a-okay. When that gets warm, that grease will filter down into the bearing and it'll help it stay lubricated, all greased up. So I'm going to pack these, get them all set. We'll install the wheel seals, put them on the car. So the hubs are all packed. Bearings are in. I've cleaned up all the hardware. Let's put them on the car. Now to do this, there's a couple of things you're going to need. Let me put this hub down. You're going to need a 6mm Allen wrench. You're going to need a crescent wrench, the old faithful crescent wrench. Don't get a crescent wrench that's going to fool around on you. It's got to be faithful. And then your spindle nut and your bearing thrust plate, spindle nut, thrust washer. Get all those. Boy, oh boy, you can have a good time. You can install a bearing on a spindle. Okay, there's one other thing I forgot. A screwdriver of reasonable size. Namely a flathead screwdriver. All right, here we go. Making sure, there's the wheel seal by the way in the back, making sure that your rear bearing is still in place, that your front bearing hasn't also fallen out. You're gonna put your thumbs on your front bearing, line everything up over your spindle, clean your spindle before you do this, slide it all up into place. And give it a little negotiating push. Hear the grease push out a little bit. Blurb, blurb. And there you go. Now then, we're at that point. Grab yourself a rag. Doesn't need to be clean, doesn't need to be dirty. Could be right in between. Be clean, could be dirty. Clean your hands on it though. Thrust plate. This thrust plate has a stain on it from where the bearing used to ride. See that? See that stain? So I'm going to put that side facing to the bearing. But a good rule of thumb, there's a flat side to this washer. I don't know if you can see how flat that is. That edge is nice and sharp. And then there's a rounder side from the stamping. This top edge, top now, is rounder. So this bottom side of things is a little bit sharper edge than that rounder edge. This flatter edge is going to go towards the bearing. Rounder one's going to go out towards the nut. You can do it either way, honestly, but this is a nice machine flat surface, so that's where the staining from the bearing was before. Put that on there like that. Spindle nut. Thread it on up into position. Make sure it's nice and cozy. Cozy snug. Snug it down. All right, you just snug it down by hand. There's a little grease on these threads. I'm going to clean off of them. All right, now that we're snugged down by hand, we're just going to spin it around some. Doesn't matter which way, you can go both ways. It's going to have to go both ways when it's eventually in action on the car. So, and this is just hand tight. We're just spinning around. We're just trying to get the bearing to ride, front and rear bearings to ride in the races and start to negotiate themselves into place. Now we can go a little bit tighter with it. Going to get them to ride again. fall into place as best as possible. Even go a little tighter still. Go a lot tighter that time. So the bearing's basically seating through this process. A lot of people don't do this, but I'm not a lot of people, so I do it. You can do your own thing, doesn't matter. Just seating the bearing, that's all I'm doing. You can throw it on here and just tighten it up and not spin it around, but then it could seat and loosen up on you really quick. So, you know, just give it a little snugging. All right, now that we're at a point where it's no longer really tightenable by hand, this nut does not take much torque at all. You do not want to crush this bearing into position. You just want it to be nice and snug. So now take a screwdriver and you shuttle the thrust washer back and forth from side to side in here. And you want to just make sure that the washer, the thrust washer, will move. It should have a stiff drag, almost like a feeler gauge. And unfortunately, this is the type of thing that doesn't translate that well to the cinema. I will show you in a second at a closer angle, but I'm going to adjust it first because it can be finicky to do. So right now I've got a little bit of drag, but it's probably too loose in my opinion. So this is where the crescent wrench comes into play because my fingers can't take it any further. So a little snugging with the crescent wrench. And I may have to back that off. Now we're going to give it a shot. Checking it back and forth. Still a little too loose. We can go a little tighter still. And sometimes when you're checking it, you'll actually see that you've backed the nut off just by sliding the washer. There we go. Nice and stiff, but still moves side to side. Actually, might still be just a tap too loose. Let's go with that. Yep, that's what I want. Now I'm going to lock it down before I show you guys because like I said, the more I move that washer, the more I'm apt to actually back that spindle nut off of there. Your adjustment isn't just going to be permanent just because you've set it. Until you lock this clamp nut, it can back itself off just with the subtlest of motion. And this does not take many foot-poundage of torque. This takes almost nothing. So you just hang a finger on it, pinky finger, whatever you want, and, you know, take it till it's nice and snug, tight stoppage. And then that's it. This nut's not going to go anywhere once it's pinched down, but it is very soft metal and you can strip it out. So don't want to mess with that. Let me get the camera focused in a little bit here on the actual washer, and I'll show you guys the shuttle action. The subtle shuttle action. So it's not the easiest thing to show, but the play back and forth in this washer is that's the test of whether or not you've got it adjusted correctly. So that's what you want right there. Just for it to shuttle back and forth, side to side, nice and gently. Nothing crazy. Just like that. And it should be stiff. And I'm twisting the screwdriver like this way, and like that way to check. And it slips out sometimes because there's grease everywhere. But to check it, and that tells me that I'm there or not. You don't want to go too far in because you don't want to mess up the bearing. But you just keep right at the outside edge and twist against that washer there. And you want just a really stiff but smooth back and forth. And then the hub should not be stiff at all. The hub should spin nice and smoothly on here and go both directions. And you want to do this with this pinch bolt here always tightened, because if you check it loose and then tighten it up and go, okay, I've done it. It's going to be perfect. Then what happens usually is that pinch bolt, as it's getting tightened, it squeezes a little bit, it off centers. It's a diagonal pinch. It's a diagonal cutout that it follows. So it'll squeeze off center, it'll put a little bit more pressure against that washer and you'll lose your adjustment. So you tighten it up, check it, and then reset it or adjust it. And then you always, can give it a little check for rock, but you're not really gonna feel any rock in it when you've got it adjusted correctly. You got to get some miles on it and then readjust. And there you have it. That's that. That's the whole system. That's everything you need to do to properly repack and set your wheel bearings on your late model Bay Bus spindles. This is a 77. So, yep. Grease cap can then go on once everything's done. There's still a little cleaning solution down in the grease cap here. Little mineral spirits from my parts washer. So get that out of there. It's got the VW logo inside there. Nice and original. Cute. We're there. I'm gonna go do the same thing on the other side. And then I've already got some brake hoses started to connect up here. And we'll get the brake assembly all into place and just keep rocking and rolling on this thing. This is a good bus. This is gonna be a fun one. It's gonna make the owners really happy. Now I've got a little anti-seize around the hub behind there. Help that for future. And I'm gonna put a little anti-seize on these rotor retaining bolts to help them for future removal. Then we can put the brake calipers on. Time to bolt up the brake caliper. Now, as I said before, these are the original calipers off of this bus, and they have been completely rebuilt by my buddy Tanasi at Phoenix Caliper. Tanasi is the caliper king, and he does the absolute best job rebuilding calipers. And if you need to have your OEM calipers rebuilt, which I strongly suggest you do over getting some sort of remanufactured caliper from an auto parts store, or even buying the new replacement calipers, the metallurgy, the quality of them is just not the same as these original units. And it may not matter that much to you, and that's fine, but in terms of ultimate longevity and having something be truly have the factory integrity is what I should say, it matters, I think. Anyway, so, there's that. And I'll put a link in the description so that you all can find Tanasi nice and easily. Send your calipers his way, and he will get them all nice and set up for you. I'm going to check the manual on the torque specs for those bolts. Torque them to spec. We'll mark them with a paint pen. You can put pads, retaining pins, spring clips, all the good stuff back in, and get on with it. Oh, yeah, and then I'll do the other side, obviously. I just checked so you don't have to. These puppies are going to 116 foot-pounds. I always do 3 times. And I usually mark Volkswagen products with yellow. of this generation because typically they were marked with yellow at this generation. But, you know, there are no rules. Mark with what you want to mark with. All right, I'll slide some pads into it, put the pins through, connect up the brake hose, reinstall the brake line. This side will be done with this part of things. Still got to replace this shock absorber. I'll mosey on over to the other side and button up the brakes over there. And then attack that rear brake situation. Yeah. But hey, we're getting close. I mean, not really. We're still a fair ways away, but we're working on it. There wouldn't be anything wrong with just reinstalling this rear brake shoe spreader bar. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's just crusty and ugly. That's it. I cleaned it up in the parts washer and it's still crusty and ugly. I cleaned the backing plate. It came out decent and the hub looks okay. Cleaned that up as well. And this is obviously a new wheel cylinder, and I'm just reassembling the rear shoes. And I was like, this bums me out. It's going to be the crustiest element, with the exception of the backing plate. It's going to be the crustiest element of the whole thing. So I'm going to blast it and paint it and put it back on. Whenever possible, I like to restore and not just repair. And I think that that's something that more people, when they're working on a vintage vehicle, should pay mind to. That's my own personal judgment. I'm being judgy. Yes, I get it. But whenever possible, if you have the extra few minutes to blast it, paint it, and put it back in, instead of leaving it be all rusty and crusty. Just like, what are we doing? This vehicle lasted for 50 years, 40 years, 30 years, 25 years. You know, lots of years, 70, 80, 100. These are all numbers. These are all years. They're numbers of years. There's different quantities of years that this vehicle has been around for. It's been around for a lot of years. Some might even say thousands upon thousands of years. When you're working on a prehistoric dinosaur vehicle, it's been out for so many years, on the road, in the salt, in the mess, the muck, the mire, the mile, after mile. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. It just completely dissolved on me. I'm gonna go blast this. Much better. Just gotta paint it up. This puts a smile on my face. And although it's not perfect, of course, you know, it's still got pock marks from the years of life that it spent. Millions upon millions of years, as we discussed. It's so much nicer than just putting a cruddy, crusted, somewhat wire brush scraped spreader bar back on this wonderful bus that just deserves the very best in life, as does this bus's owner. So, you know, it's the little things. Anyway, I'm going to proceed with the brake replacement, rebuild, and then we're going to get into some other fun stuff on this bus. So, yeah. It's making me happy. It's not really a happy face, is it? It's more like a, I don't know.
mustache.